your boy Terrence back with Hollywood Already Did It, another trailer rewind for you guys. Now, we're in the Endgame. This is Endgame week. Everything's all set out. We got 4 days left for most of us in America. Other countries, you got a couple more, like maybe 48 hours. So you're really in it. If you went to the channel and you saw the last trailer rewind, we're kind of go back over phase 2. Well, in that other video, we did phase 1. We're going to look at the phase 2 films for this one, which, depending on how you feel about certain films in this, could be the one that's either hit or miss. This may have been when you fell out of love with the MCU, or maybe what grabs you even more. For me, I like one of the films that a lot of people just deride and hate. So my love for phase 2 is like, oh, this is pretty solid. And it has 2 of my outright favorite films in the entire MCU in it. But before we get started, just a little house cleaning. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, subscribe, ring the bell below, and anytime we throw up a video, you'll be the first to know, all right? So let's go ahead and look at phase 2. Phase 2 is interesting because it's coming off the heels of off the heels of Avengers, which blew up, made $1 billion, everything's great. And so what a lot of people attribute to the success of what is the first film we'll talk about, Iron Man 3, is that it's the next one. So yeah, it was going to make $1 billion. I call BS, but whatever. So Iron Man 3 was done by Shane Black. It's the first Iron Man film that did not have Jon Favreau as one of the directors and or writers, although he's still in it, is happy. And it feels a bit different than the other 2 films. Let's look at the trailer because I want to see what the major issue and major hang-up that a lot of people have with Iron Man 3 is that it does a very, very deliberate bait and switch on the main villain, the Mandarin. It also is probably the one film that has Tony out of the Iron Man costume the longest amount of time. And that can kind of rub people the wrong way. I thought, honestly, it has the best action sequences in the Iron Man franchise and Avengers. But I can see why some people hate it. It's, for me, and I probably am going to die on this hill, my co-host of the Hollywood Already Did podcast sits on there with me. We are fans of Iron Man 3. But real quick, just a little feedback for me for Iron Man in that year of 2013. I and my wife were going to St. Martin, the islands, and we were prepping to go out there, and I had this whole elaborate thing to go out and be proposed to her. This is the year that I proposed, but she ruined it. I won't go into all the details on that, but she messed that up, and so I had to propose because we were getting on a plane, and I didn't want the ring to go through security because 1, it would ruin it, but 2, they'd be like, wait, what's this? So I didn't want that. So I proposed off the cuff, and we went down there. So that was our whole thing to go to St. Martin. We were kind of celebrating our engagement. But it also happened to be the weekend of the Iron Man 3 release. And so while I was very excited, I wanted to spend all the time on the island and kind of get some sun and beach. My main thing, and this shows you how much I was already into the MCU, my main thing on that island was like, yeah, I want rest, but I need to make sure that this island has a movie theater so that I can see Iron Man 3. And that was my focus. Like, yeah, you can watch it when you come back. Yeah, but I don't want to watch it when I come back. I want to watch it now. So this is the first film, while I was in love with the Avengers and in love with the MCU, this is the first film post Avengers that I did not see on the opening day or opening first, second, or third day. I had to wait like 5 or 6 days before I saw it. Well, we did find the theater down there and went there, and it was a pretty solid theater. We went there, watched it, and I loved it. And it was funny because while you're on the island, you don't have much internet connection, or you can choose to. I chose to kind of get away, so I wasn't aware that it was getting derided and lambasted as much as it was until I got back home. And everybody was like, man, this is awful. This is worse. I hate this movie. And I was like, wait, what? The movie? Did we see the same thing? So let's look at the trailer and kind of see what got us to that point. All right, and we're going to start it up in 1, 2, 3. So it begins with the snow.
Got a lot of apologies to make.
Got the Marvel pages. I think this is one of the first films that has the pages right off top. Still has the Paramount logo though.
Nothing's been the same since New York.
What I do love about this
Experience things.
Iron Man 3 a lot too is the first time that we get someone who is dealing with the ramifications of what happened in Avengers. I mean, you think about it, Tony, a regular man, took a suit up into space in a wormhole and fought aliens. So he is no longer the biggest thing since sliced bread. There's a much larger world, and you kind of get that in this. This trailer does show that there's a lot of stakes. You see all the suits blowing up. You see Iron Patriot.
Some people call me a terrorist. I consider myself a teacher.
A teacher. Ben Kingsley does kill it as the Mandarin. I know you guys are going to kill me for that.
One. Heroes. There is no such thing.
I love this scene of the house being exploded, and it's one of my favorite scenes in any of the Iron Man movies. It's such a great sequence. And for them to put that in the trailer, you're like, oh, we're going to see Tony get broken and beat up, which you do in the movie. Oh, wow, that's a cool logo too. The logo shows that, obviously you can see it has the Iron Man centerpiece lit up, and then it's dying and flickering off. And you kind of see the end shot of Tony dragging one of his suits through the snow, which I think is great. I mean, this trailer does a really good job of showing you that we're going to put Tony through the stakes. And I think when it's all said and done, you do get that through Iron Man 3. I love Iron Man 3, but I know a lot of you don't. Go ahead and put it in the comments and tell me how much of a jerk or ridiculous I am to enjoy that film. Or if you are one of the people who love it as much as I do, please, we need to band together because it's hard out here. So the next film that came in the MCU was Thor: The Dark World. Now, I've spoken in the last video about how much I love Thor, but that was mainly a little bit of selfish reasons because I was a part of that process. For this one, I was not, and it's after the rewatch that we've had this week that I've been doing. Thor: The Dark World was the film that I had the hardest time getting back through. It's a very difficult watch. It's just not many things that I am interested in story-wise or action beat-wise in that film. I think there are some great moments, spoilers, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, but there's some great moments as far as Thor's mom passing and the response that Loki gives when he has the mirage in the jail cell. That's a great sequence. Some of the action beats at the end with them going through portals and stuff is pretty cool to watch, but overall, this is the film that I think if you were still not on by this point, this could have knocked you out of the MCU. Because it's a very, very hard film to sit through. And I remember going to the theater to watch it, and obviously my wife was with me. Well, she was my fiance at the time. My fiance was with me, and she liked it because Thor, I mean, the way he looks. But I just kept sitting there when we went to the theater. I remember nothing about it, and I was like, I don't ever need to see that film again. And that's a hard thing. There are some good movies that fit in that point where you're just like, that was too harsh or too rough. I liked it, but I never want to go through that experience again. This was one of those ones that was like, I just don't ever need to see this again. But let's go ahead and look at what the Thor Dark World trailer looked like to see if at least it was enticing enough to kind of bring us in at that point in time. You think about it, from this to Iron Man 3, they were doing $1 billion for each. So this will be the first film that they kind of start going back. It's like, okay, we're not going to always hit that number, but we may come pretty close consistently. And Thor: The Dark World only made $640 million. So it kind of got to that point where it's like, okay, maybe they're not perfect. But let's go ahead and take a look at this trailer. I'm going to start it up now.
After all this time, now you come to visit me, brother. Why? To mock. I need your help.
It's cool because these are still obviously taking place right after Avengers, so you have Tony going through his process of dealing with PTSD, and here you have Loki in prison because of the crimes that he committed against Earth.
There is nothing. They're wrong.
You still have Jane Foster, Natalie Portman. She still wanted to be a part of this at that point in time. That quickly changed.
What's gonna happen?
I gave you my word. I would return for you.
Still is a very beautiful movie. I think that's one thing that these Thor films have done well, is that they establish Asgard and make it a fully fleshed, lived-in environment, which is why when it pops up in the Endgame trailer, you're kind of like, oh yeah, Asgard. Even if you don't remember the film that well, with fondness, you're like, Asgard was a good time. I also did kind of like dig the buddy aspect, the buddy cop aspect that Thor and Loki had going for a minute. It got a little weird with the whole ship flying, the two of them, because it became jokey. In a world where it felt like everything else in this movie took itself so serious. And I don't have a problem with you taking it serious, but there has to be levels to it.
Find a way to save us all.
Malekith is such a wasted villain too.
All yours.
I miss Sif too. We don't get enough of her anymore.
Anyone else?
Such an interesting way to view that movie and that trailer. Think about it coming off of Thor that we got in Avengers. He just played better in that movie, and I don't know if it was because he wasn't the full thing or this is just a poorly directed film. But I think it's safe to say that this, depending on how you feel at Iron Man 3, has led Phase 2 to start off a little bumpy. So I know some people are kind of like, if this is what we're getting, I don't really want to be a part of this anymore. You know, I think I may be checking out. And then we're hit with what could be arguably most people's #1 film that the MCU has made. Infinity War may have taken that spot. You may have something else that rings truer to you, but on average, Winter Soldier is going to be in the top 3 of basically everyone's MCU list, and deservingly so. I remember when this movie was being made and they were like, the 2 of the directors who done episodes of Community are directing this. And you're like, wait, I'm sorry. What did you say now? And it got a little people kind of nervous. You're like, Joe Johnston's not coming back, so you're not doing the swashbuckling thing. You're doing like a spy thriller. You're like, okay, all right, fine, I'll bite. Cap doesn't really mean that much to me. We'll see what happens. And this becomes sort of the linchpin, and these directors become the through line for a lot of what happens in the MCU from this point forward. What's really cool is that this is probably the first film that's not a full-on Avengers movie where you could start teaming up people and they don't have to be with the entire team. So we get Black Widow over here, or we introduce Anthony Mackie's Falcon, we put him in here, and now you can select, okay, we don't always have to have the entire squad, but we can have 2 or 3 and kind of like, this is now a fully fleshed in, like they do in comic books. You don't always get every single character to show up, but every now and then you'll get 1 or 2 and you're like, oh, all right, cool, we're in this. But for me, Winter Soldier is definitely my top film of the MCU. And let's go ahead and take a look at this trailer, because I think I haven't watched this one in a while, and I wanted to see if the trailer invokes how good this movie actually is. All right, so we're going to start this bad boy up now.
on the drop zone, Cap.
Did you do anything fun Saturday night?
Well, all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead, so no, not really.
You can see that Cap has a little levity.
You should probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy. Was he wearing a parachute?
No.
No, he wasn't.
It just shows you how badass Cap is, just jumping out of a plane for shits and giggles.
To protect people. Captain, to build a better world sometimes means tearing the old one down.
You get a hold of Robert Redford in the movie?
And that makes enemies.
All right, Marvel.
Are you ready for the world to see you as you really are? Look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step. We're going to neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
This movie and the trailer gives that, feels a lot more grounded and realistic as you can for a comic book movie. Yes, the third act of this movie still gets crazy with the helicarriers and whatnot, but you're in this for an entire movie. All this elevator sequences. Bananas. They do a good job of not showing you Crossbones in that trailer, that he's in the elevator too, or Rumlow at that point.
I need you to do it one more time.
Winter Soldier.
You're up.
It's funny that they show kind of the shadow that's Bucky, but I remember being in the movie theaters with an audience, and when his mask came off and revealed to Cap that was Bucky, there was an audible gasp, and I'm like, well, even without reading the comics, you shouldn't be able to see that. Oh yeah, Cap. Yeah, that's a fantastic trailer. That trailer is nuts. It's it's a movie that the second that trailer dropped, any problems people had with saying, "Oh, the Russos, like who are these people?" to be like, "Oh, I need to see that movie." And granted, you couldn't tell what the entire film was like, but that looked like something that was very different than Thor, very different than Iron Man, but felt like we're getting a new chapter, a new skin or coat of paint on what we know of Captain America. I mean, that Winter Soldier, the star with the blue stripes, with the white stripes, it's a classic uniform. You get to see Natasha back again, even though we're not getting a film for her at this point. We are now. You get to see her kind of interact and S.H.I.E.L.D. grow onto a bigger stage. Now, as anyone who's seen that film, S.H.I.E.L.D. was then subsequently destroyed, and it had, this movie was the film that had an effect on the TV universe. Even though they don't play that well together, S.H.I.E.L.D. had to retroactively respond to what was given to them in this film because S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer existed. With S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer existing, it kind of subsequently affected all other MCU films, which is a long-reaching thing. But that movie made about $700 plus million worldwide. It started to kind of get the momentum back that the MCU was starting to lose with Thor: The Dark World. It quickly turned things back around, and people were like, okay, I'm on board. And then they hit you with another one later in that year, in August, for Guardians of the Galaxy. They had the 1-2 combo in August. Now, if you watched the first trailer rewind video for Phase 1, you realize that I spoke about how the first Thor was their hardest one to kind of put out and get accepted by the masses. And then they're like, well, if we're doing this and people took that in, how about we do a talking tree and a talking raccoon and see what they say then? And in August of 2014, they gave it to us. This one's interesting because again, like I said earlier, I was engaged in 2013 and I got married in 2014 of October. So this came out in August. So I'm kind of in the throes of getting all of that started. But what was interesting for me about Guardians is this show, this channel, the podcast that we do for Hollywood Already Did It, kind of all sort of grows from Guardians of the Galaxy. So a couple of notes. Myself and Blake, who's the co-host of the podcast, we worked together, and I got passes to go to this thing that Guardians of the Galaxy was doing. It was like a pre-screener for just a small little 10-15 minute clip in IMAX, I believe, to watch Guardians of the Galaxy. Now they were doing it because they needed to show and prove to a lot of fans to be like, all right, this is weird, but if we show you what the style is and what we're doing, you might be able to understand it. So I got a couple of passes, and I was like, well, he seems to like comics as much as I do, and he seems to like movies as much as I do. I'll invite him and see if he wants to go. And he did. So we showed up to a theater over here by me, and it was a pretty decent line for just what was 15 minutes. Not that they're showing the entire film, but it kind of shows you how much the MCU stuff was starting to grow. And we went in there, and they gave us a poster, like a little poster, and we went in there, we watched it, and he and I kind of talked for a good 30 minutes because we had to wait in line, and kind of got to know each other more and kind of realized, like, oh no, we're cut from the same cloth. So we went in there and we watched it, and we loved what we saw. They gave us the scene of pretty much the jail sequence when they got caught, the rundown of their stats, and then that jail sequence too right around the breakout. Loved it. And that allowed people to kind of see what they were getting as far as the style and what they were doing with the movie. So then the movie comes out in August, which at that point in time was sort of the dumping ground for movies. So August, you kind of like, all right, well, we'll put it out and we'll see what happens. And this movie blew up. For me, it's in my top 5. I know a lot of people love this film. It's in their top 3 or 5 movies. It's very stylized. It's very weird, but it works. So let's go ahead and take a look at the trailer and see what we got, all right? This movie is also funny because Blake and I went to go see this movie together, and we missed the first 5 minutes because we had to find parking because the theater was so busy.
No. Yeah. Hey, go, man. No problem. No problem at all.
Who are you?
Star-Lord.
Who?
Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
And this is when you immediately realize, like, okay, this is tongue-in-cheek. I kind of dig this. It gives you a new tone, the opposite of Winter Soldier completely.
Drax, aka the Destroyer, since his wife and
It has a
family were
bit of a
killed
Flash
on a
Gordon
rampage
vibe, which I
across
think
the
works
galaxy
out to
in
its
search for
advantage.
vengeance.
Then you have John C.
Gamora,
Reilly and
soldier, assassin, wandered on over
Zoe
a dozen
Saldana is
counts of
pretty
murder.
much the geek
Rocket,
queen
wandered on
from
over
this and
50
Star Trek
charges of
together.
Particular theft and escape from lockup.
What the hell?
It's a very smart trailer in that they do the rundown without it feeling out of place. They're like, well, we can explain all these characters and put all these characters out in front of everyone.
Star-Lord.
Who calls him that?
And it works as both an intro to what they're doing with the style and with these characters.
And fraud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked.
And then you start doing this soundtrack, and
Hey,
it just
that's
becomes
mine.
a perfect storm of classic music, Flash Gordon style of
Take those headphones
sci-fi.
off right now.
It's a breath of fresh air. And Chris Pratt is like ripped after being on Parks and Recreation, eating all the donuts in the world.
They call themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy.
What a bunch of a-holes.
That you're in love with me. Such a smart and well done trailer to both introduce you to a group of people who have no idea what you're doing and bring on and keep on the fans that you've already had, you know. And this movie went on to make millions. It's around the 700 million mark too. So they definitely course corrected quickly from the bad stuff that Thor: The Dark World gave them, and then they gave us the 1-2 punch of Winter Soldier, and and Guardians. And then they hit us with Joss Whedon gets to come back, and everyone's amped. Like, oh man, Avengers are back together. You got Ultron. You got Joss Whedon back, who a lot of people refer to as like the savior of geekdom for some reason. We'll get into that into an entire different video. But the movie itself went on to make $1 billion plus some dollars because you're coming off of two great films, and you're bringing back the entire Avengers team that you brought back before, with James Spader sounding like he's going to be playing a crazy Ultron. It's weird because the movie makes a lot of money, but for me, it's in their bottom ranking of my films for the MCU. I'm curious to see what you guys have to think about it, because go ahead and throw that in the comments, because I think this trailer, and we'll go look at it, it makes it feel like Ultron's a lot more serious and darker than what we wind up with in the film. And I think one problem that a lot of people sometimes have with the MCU is that sometimes, even when you should be taking things serious, sometimes you take things too funny. And I know it's done to make stuff palatable for the general audience, but you do it sometimes to the detriment of what the entire film is. Like, I feel like Ultron doesn't really have a villain that works. To bring that entire team together, that villain isn't as life-threatening as he should be. Especially when you get to the final battle and they're destroying some of these Ultron robots by just like hitting them. I know not all of them are made with the vibranium that he steals, but it seems like they're made of paper mache. Like, Quicksilver just runs through them. So I think that's what a lot of people have problems with that movie, is because of that, you know. But we're gonna go ahead and pull up the Ultron trailer. All right, and starting it up now.
Everyone screaming for mercy. You want to protect the world, but you don't want it to change.
Spader, by the way, voice is amazing in this movie.
You're all puppets, tangled in strings.
I remember this trailer so well because it's got the haunting, slowed down, I've got no strings from Pinocchio, which is perfect for this movie. And it is said in the movie.
It's the end. The end of the path I started us on.
Nothing lasts forever.
It's funny hearing this trailer say this is the end when we know how much more we've gotten and how Infinity War feels more like the end than this. We get to obviously introduced to the twins with Scarlet and Quicksilver. We see Claw, which this movie, after watching it through the rewatch, does a lot to kind of put Black Panther on the map. They mention Wakanda, Claw's in it. Quicksilver looks great.
There are no strings on me.
I mean, that just sounds like a horror movie. And even the red Avengers trailer, font at the end feels like a horror film. Which we don't get when it actually is released, which is why I think a lot of people, this one and Iron Man 3 have the most in the trailer that gives you one thing and then gives you a complete misdirect for the actual film that's released. I think that's why a lot of people sometimes have a problem accepting either of them. What I will say, from Avengers 1 to Avengers Age of Ultron, Joss Whedon's a much better director, and it feels a lot less like a made-for-television flick than it does an actual picture. There's some times where I think the colors are so heightened that it feels like a TV movie, where Ultron feels more like an actual theatrical release because the color tones are darker, and he does things on a lot more grander scale. It's just the script, unfortunately, gets a little wonky and it's not the best. I don't mind rewatching it because I think sort of like I did last time on the trailer rewind for Phase One, like Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. I feel about the same way from Avengers into Avengers Age of Ultron. Is that it's good to see all of these characters back together. I just wish that if we were going to take the time to do these together, that they had a better film in doing it. It's funny though because, and like I said, it made $1 billion, so they didn't take a loss. But then what they did was in that same year they did like sort of a palate cleanser for Phase Two, and to end off Phase Two, we finally got Ant-Man, which was originally one of their very first films that they were trying to do for the MCU, but it just took them forever to do it. And then this one originally, for a lot of people know that for whatever reason, creative differences between Edgar Wright and Kevin Feige, the spearheader of all Marvel Cinematic Universe, they couldn't come to an agreement on some things. So Edgar Wright decided to leave / get fired / remove himself from, however you want to look at it. But basically what happened is the scene that I believe when Ant-Man goes to the Avengers facility and fights Falcon was asked to be put in, this is what they're saying, was asked to be put in by Kevin and was not received well by Edgar. So the first time that Marvel kind of had any egg on their face a little bit with a director leaving. Star Wars does it all the time now, but at that point in time, it was kind of a new thing for Marvel. So that was the first time in the midst, towards the tail end of Phase 2, that they started to have a little bit of a egg on their face. Didn't really affect anything too much, but because Ant-Man still went on to make around $500 million, which is on the lower end, but it's like I said, it's a palate cleanser. And kind of that, not all films have to be the great, gigantic Avengers, Infinity War type stuff. Not everything has to be Thor: The Dark World. This is that middle tier area, which kind of gives you, the Captain Marvel area of stuff where it's like not great, but it's still pretty solid. I do remember I have a love for Ant-Man is because I took my nephew to see it, and it was the credit sequences towards the end of the movie, and he had not peed, and he had to go to the bathroom. So I had to get up and leave and take the young man to go to the bathroom. And I was like, damn, I'm not going to see the end credits. And my wife, as I know she was a trooper, recorded it for me so that I would come back and be able to watch what I missed, I was like, and I didn't ask her to do it, she just did it, which was pretty amped because considering she didn't really care about Ant-Man, she always thinks it's a very silly character. It's like, oh, this guy rides ants and talks to ants. That's what we're going to go see. But she's all in on the MCU, and she wound up going with me to go watch this one. So let's go ahead and look at this last trailer and see what we got, okay? It's interesting because I don't think this movie does a good job of creating a villain. This is the first time that I think the consistent thought of just having a mirror bizarro image of who you're facing against started to kind of wear thin with people. And I think this film would probably go higher on people's list if the villain was worth anything. But it's Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. Yeah, you can't really beat that.
I've been watching you for a while.
Scott Lang is pretty awesome.
You're different. I believe everyone deserves a shot.
It's cool to show a character like in jail and broken because I think this is the first time that we also have a character who is sort of gray area in the MCU. Daredevil's on television, but I mean, as far as the films go, who's a villain or a bad guy, if you will, and like this is sort of a redemption to make him a hero, which is kind of a cool thing. And also, it's one of the first times that we get a father figure. We got Hawkeye in Ultron, but at that point we didn't know this is the first one of our main heroes that's a hero.
When you're small, you have superhuman strength.
I do love the scale stuff on this movie. Again, it's not one of the greatest things, but it's a way to put a character like Ant-Man on the board and giving him his own little film with, that's how you punch, without just inundating him and just putting him in a film and just saying, well, you gotta accept him. this is a way to put him on the board, and you're like, okay, folks, this is who he is from this point on. Some of the silliness that we do here doesn't have to always happen.
Did you think you could stop the future? You're just a thing.
No. I'm Ant-Man. I know. Wasn't my idea.
Even they make fun of the name, which is pretty cool. But it's a dangerous thing, because if they make fun of the name, then how do you expect the audience to make fun of it? I mean, to not make fun of it. But they play a cool little middle ground. It's like, they don't take themselves too serious, but I think Thor Dark World messed up at it. Like this. The Thomas the Tank Engine stuff. It's so cute. I like the finale of Ant-Man. I know some people were like, they did it in the kid's toy room, but I like that the stakes were higher for our hero and villain while being put in a kid's toy room. Is a good juxtaposition. It shows you the yin and the yang, but it came together. And I thought it came together in a very fulfilling finale. Say what you will about the movie. It's not great. It's in the middle tier, but I think it's a serviceable way to put somebody on the map, you know? But that is phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'll be back tomorrow with the final video, trailer rewind for phase 3. And it'll be game day. It's time to go, you know? Go ahead and leave your comments below. I am approving them until Endgame actually is released. We have a little bit of time, so I don't want any jackasses or jerks to kind of spoil anything for you guys. But go ahead and approve them. We have a discussion. If there are any Iron Man 3 fans out there at all, please, please, let us ring from the mountaintops. We gotta make ourselves a support group, because there's only about 7 of us. But go ahead and leave a comment. Hit us up on HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. All right, your boy Terrence got my ticket. You got yours?